It's that time of the year once again where you gather around with friends, with family, with either or, with whomever you decide.
Cats.
Cats, it's a good point. And you're like, hey, let's give each other gifts and also indulge ourselves in holiday media.
Yep.
And that's what we do here as well.
It's our
We like
annual
to get into the
tradition.
holiday spirit, our annual tradition where we watch holiday-themed media or play holiday-themed media in this case.
Yep.
Around the time of Christmas.
Yep.
And that's what we've done today again here on this week's episode of Season Checkup OVA. It's a podcast where we have conversations about video games, anime, and manga. Hello, I'm Jared, joined as always by the patron saint of Christmas, Doc Owl and Ladium.
Hello. Does that make me Jesus?
Or you're Santa Claus.
I'd rather be Santa Claus.
Yeah, it's probably an easier route.
Mm-hmm.
You got a one day of hard work and you don't have to get nailed.
Whoa. Whoa.
To a board.
Phrasing.
It is like we said, it's the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
As we get this goes up, won't be for a couple more days for one of the holidays.
It's close enough.
Some of the other holidays will be going on at this point probably.
Mm-hmm.
But like we said, we annually do something around this time of the year. We watched 2 anime films the previous years. We watched the Sailor Moon S movie with the wild 90s dub.
And Tuxedo Mask throwing off the Santa suit.
Mm-hmm. Iconic. Last year we watched the Gundam Wing film, which was very confusing for you because that is the sequel film to the television series.
Oh, I was so confused.
But takes place during Christmas, so it counts.
Yep.
This year we went to the realm of video games.
We're gonna have to ask for suggestions next year.
I mean, there's options out there. We'll figure it out. And then there's games that are set around the Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And one such game that I know of takes place around Christmas time is a game by one of your favorite developers.
Do not slander me this way. I have better taste than that.
There is a specific song on the soundtrack of this game that has the words "Merry Christmas" in it.
It's true.
It's very true. We played a game called Snatcher.
Mm-hmm.
A game from Hideo Kojima. This was made in between him making, I think this is right after he made Metal Gear 1.
That would make sense.
He goes in to make this. It is a cyberpunk adventure game.
Yep.
Heavily influenced by definitely other pieces of media.
Yep. Which we did some homework and watched that other piece of media.
We did. So some interesting correlations there.
Which it's funny, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but we had a debate on which version to watch.
Yeah.
It was great.
Ultimately, we went with the one that would have been the inspiration.
Yep.
So yeah, Snatcher. That's a video game.
It is a video game.
It's a game that's come out on a lot of different systems. Only one over in America, only one English translation. But it originally came out on November 26th, 1988 for the PC 8801.
Wait, the year I was born? 88?
Yes, 88.
Holy moly.
In December of 88 as well, it came to the MSX2. On October 23rd, 1992, it came to the PC Engine CD. In Europe in December 94 and in North America in January 95, it came to the Sega CD. And then on January 26, 1996, it came to the Sony PlayStation. And on March 29th, 1996, it finally released on the Sega Saturn. So there are definitely multiple versions of this game with various differences throughout them and all that sort of stuff. So we will discuss those in this episode. So let's start in with that. You want to talk about some development?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, did you know Snatcher was created by Hideo Kojima when he was working for Konami?
I had an inkling that was the case.
Were you aware this was heavily influenced by Blade Runner and other works of cinema?
You don't say.
Yeah, I know. It's very surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Kojima wanted to develop a game with a similar style. The game was pitched as a cyberpunk adventure, which Kojima found difficult to explain the meaning of cyberpunk to Konami's trademark department over the phone. It's like Blade Runner. Did you watch Blade Runner?
Did you watch Blade Runner? Because
Basically that.
that's what I'm making is Blade Runner.
The game was originally titled Junker, but the name sounded too similar to an existing Mahjong game. The title New Order was also considered. Kojima did not like the final name because his previous game Metal Gear was also named after an enemy in the game. Development began between Kojima and character designer Tomohiro Kinoshita, who both treated the project like making a film or anime rather than a game, which basically sounds like anything Kojima has made since then.
Yep. Definitely does.
They expanded to form a small team at Konami about half the size needed for a typical Famicom game at the time, which allowed them to work closely and quickly. The game was filled with sci-fi culture references that skirt copyright laws. It's a lot of those.
Yep.
Kojima told Kinoshita to make Gillian, the protagonist, similar to Katsuhiro Otomo, the director of the science fiction film Akira. The team never aimed for the game to have a mature atmosphere, but it naturally progressed in that direction. In addition to fourth wall breaking dialogue in the game, Kojima wanted to print a secret message and heat-activated scent on the floppy disks that could be noticed after warming them up in the disk drive. But Konami did not approve of this idea.
Yeah. So he was already up to his bullshit by then.
I mean, this is the guy who at one point wanted to make like a Metal Gear game where if something happened in the game, the disc would blow up in your system.
Yeah, that's... I hate Kojima so much.
After a year and a half, Snatcher was only half completed. Originally, Kojima planned 6 chapters, but was told to trim them down to 2. The team wanted to create a 3rd chapter, but were already over the allowed development schedule, so were forced to end the game on a cliffhanger. Development took about 2 to 3 times longer than the average game. Difficulties with memory constraints prompted the staff to take a break during development, at which time Kojima began to explore concepts for his later game, Police Knots. So like I told you when we were playing, the Sega CD version and some of the other prior later releases have 3 chapters. The original release only had 2. So at the end of chapter 2, the game just ends.
That's awful.
Originally, Snatcher was going to be a PC 8801 exclusive, but it was also developed for the MSX2 at the request of Konami. The MSX was one of the key systems that like Metal Gear was developed for and everything, so it makes sense. The PC 8801 version supports FM and stereo sound. Whoa, buddy.
Whoa.
Via the PC 8801 Soundboard 2 expansion card, while the MSX2 version came with a special cartridge that provided an expanded sound scope beyond the platform's default capabilities and extra RAM featuring different music track arrangements. The expansion cartridge raised the price of the MSX2 version beyond that of the PC 8801 version, a reverse from the platform's typically cheaper retail game pricing. The quality of music and sound was greater than other games at the time and required a larger than usual sound team. Because neither platform was capable of accurately synthesizing speech, sound effects were used to represent character dialogue. And then Snatcher was released in '88 on both platforms.
You know, it's interesting that you were saying that he was inspired by like Akira.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, like if you look at Gillian or whatever the heck his name was, is that his name?
Yes.
He's Harrison Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Like the outfit's the exact same and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels kind of suspect to me.
Well, this is talking about the original version of the game.
Oh,
so.
right. Okay. Right. That makes sense.
Well, let's talk about some of the expanded versions.
Let's do it.
The first version that was for the home consoles, the PC Engine CD version. Players began asking for a home console version soon after release. Because the game was large and required several floppy disks, only CD-ROM systems were considered as opposed to systems that ran ROM cartridges. The PC Engine had the Super CD-ROM squared system. That's the name of that thing. Available, so it was chosen to host Snatcher's console port, not porn. I mean, there's probably some there too.
Woo!
This port was the first time the development team worked with CD technology. The team added a 3rd act to this version, a decision that they were criticized internally for, as others believed the game was already long enough. Which was weird because, like, if you basically mainline that game through, like with like a walkthrough, that game is very short.
Very short. It took us like no time at all because we had planned it was going to take us a while, and then we're like, oh, we're done.
Yeah. Using CD technology enabled him to add recorded speech and high-quality background and music. Artist Satoshi Yoshioka created the graphics for this version. Kojima wanted the visuals to appear as cinematic as possible, so Yoshioka pulled inspiration from Blade Runner, The Terminator, and Alien to replicate their Hollywood-style special effects. He used a custom drawing application by Konami to create the character graphics, including the facial expressions during conversations. He found Gillian's expressions to be the most difficult to animate due to the complexities of his characterization. A trial version called the Pilot Disc was released on August 7th, 1992. It covers the beginning of the first act and also contains supplemental content such as character introductions, a preview trailer, and select music tracks. The full version was released on October 23rd, 1992, and reportedly sold well for a PC Engine game. Which is interesting. Like, that sounds way more above and beyond like the normal demo disc would typically be, where it's just like, here's the level of the game. That's it.
Yay.
Then we get the Sega CD version a few years later. After releasing its first game on the Sega CD, Lethal Enforcers, Konami wanted to bring a more interactive experience to the system for Western players. It considered making a game in full motion video like Night Trap, but thought it might be too difficult and ultimately decided to localize and port Snatcher. This also gave the Snatcher developers an opportunity to improve upon the PC Engine version, which they were still not completely satisfied with. Although the Sega CD could only display 64 colors simultaneously compared to the PC Engine's 256, the team used software techniques to increase this to 112 and modified some of the palettes to compromise. Several scenes were censored or otherwise altered for the Sega CD release, this is where you're going to be very mad at Kojima. A woman's breasts were covered up, which apparently is a scene where the lady Snatcher, you basically shoot her in the head.
Yeah.
And you see her dead body. Her are out in the original version.
Which, like, is super gross and, like, unnecessary, but also, like, it's some kind of, like, weird fetishization of, like, women's bodies. It's like, oh, you know, she doesn't have a head, but, like, look, her boobs are out. It's like, what are you doing? Like, that's unnecessary. God, I hate Kojima.
A 14-year-old girl shown standing naked in a shower was now obscured and her age was changed to 18.
I'm glad that it was changed, and I'm glad that it was obscured. But why did it exist in the first place?
Yep. Some options that allowed Gillian to engage in behaviors related to sexual harassment were removed or toned down, such as those that allowed him to sniff panties or stare at breasts. Audio in which a robot becomes aroused while watching a pornographic film was cut out entirely. The violence was not altered, except for one scene where a partially dead dog with twitching innards was made completely dead with no twitching. Fearing copyright issues in the United States, the clientele in a bar was changed from Kamen Rider, the alien from Alien, and other characters to, probably from like film and everything, to Konami characters.
Right.
Feeling that the third act was too movie-like, Konami added more interactivity through additional forks and choices. Additionally, the player is now graded on how well they solve the mysteries. Dates of events in the games were also moved up 5 years to still occur in the near future to compensate for the late release, because considering this was like 7 years after the initial release, so I believe like the initial Japanese version, everything like the whole beginning of the game takes place in like 92, and then this version is like 96 or something like that. The game was translated by Scott Hards with the supervision from Jeremy Blostein and Konami of Japan. The translation took about 2 to 3 months. 7 voice actors recorded about 2.5 hours of dialogue for 26 different characters. With the large amount of text included in the game, the translation was expensive, and Konami felt it was the most difficult part of the porting process. According to Blostein, Kojima was not involved with the Sega CD port, likely working on Police Knots at the time. Snatcher was released in December 94 in Europe and January 95 in North America, and according to Blostein, it only sold a couple thousand copies in the US and was ultimately considered a commercial failure. Its poor sales have been attributed to its late release during the Sega CD's lifespan.
I'm still, like, caught up on the whole, like, behavior.
That is the thing.
Yeah, it is. Just do better, people. Do better.
So that's basically a lot of the development. There's nothing really about the PlayStation or Saturn versions. Yeah, the Sega CD version has never been re-released. It's basically just like that. That is the only North American version of the game that's out there. It is technically coming out on the TurboGrafx Mini, because all the different region games are going to be on that same thing, regardless of which version you get.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just the Japanese version; they're not localizing it.
Oh my god!
So technically, it would be the PC Engine CD version, but how are you going to play that game in Japanese if you don't know it?
If you don't know Japanese, then like
it's just useless.
Kind of boned.
Yeah. So there you go. There was a remake-isk of Snatcher called SD Snatcher, where it was made for the MSX2, and it turned the game into an RPG. So that is an interesting thing. The game plays from a top-down perspective where the player controls Gillian as he ventures through the environment. When the player encounters an enemy on the field, the game shifts to a first-person battle mode. The player must shoot down enemies using one of many different guns. Different parts of an enemy can be targeted, and different weapons have varying abilities and ranges. Outside of key plots, the game significantly changes the locations explored and events which transpired in the original. The game also concludes the story in a similar manner to the CD versions. Like the MSX2 version of Snatcher, SD Snatcher shipped with the expanded sound cartridge. And it was translated by the Dutch-based group Oasis in '93, making it one of the earliest documented fan translations.
Huh.
Which that's cool. And then in 2011, there was a prequel to Snatcher made as a radio drama. And perhaps the most interesting thing about this is that it is called Snatcher.
Snatcher.
Snatcher. And it was a collaboration between Kojima and Suda51.
Which is wild.
Mm-hmm. Basically, Suda51 says that like Snatcher and then like some of Yu Suzuki's works are like what got him into games and like wanting to make games and everything. So like he went to Kojima and was like, hey, you want to make a game together? And then eventually that led into them making this radio drama prequel of Snatcher. Which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I just, I don't know, man.
Kojima. I would be interested to see what that is. But, you know.
Kojima.
Also, the music is done by the dude who worked on like early Silent Hill games. Which seems like a weird musical choice.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So there you go. That's your development history of a Snatcher. We obviously played the Sega CD version, so because that's the easiest one to get. It's already got a translation and everything. You don't have to find weird fan translations or anything like that.
Had that fantastic voice acting.
It does have that fantastic voice acting.
Oh boy.
Which, I mean, again, you know,
it's
95.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, what can you do?
It's not great, but like at the time, that would have been like mind blowing. That like there's so much voice acting in this game.
Right. I mean, and I probably would have been like, whoa, and you know, at that point, I wouldn't have known how terrible Kojima is. So.
I mean, I don't think really anyone knew who Kojima was at the time. So.
No, I'm just thinking like, you know, there were better days when I didn't know who Kojima was. And now my innocence has been lost.
There you go. The Sega CD version is also kind of weird in and of itself because you can play this game with the Sega light gun, the Justifier.
Oh my god!
So you could do the shooting sequences with that thing, which I would assume would be great. Clearly,
I imagine that would be very, very difficult.
Yeah. But it'd be interesting. Like, it's just a weird thing to include. But yeah. This was your first experience with this game? And what, like, your second real experience with, like, an actual Kojima game all the way through? Because you said you've played 4, MGS4.
I played 4, yes.
Had you played any of the other ones, or?
Yeah, I had played through some of them. Like, not to completion, but bits and pieces. Yeah, I think I realized relatively early on that I didn't care for his stuff. But the thing is, and you will, because you know me, and because you know me very well, this will make the most sense to you, if anything, that I would probably say on this.
I can confirm that.
So when I got my PS3, I wanted to get the backwards compatible one.
The big old, like, George Foreman grill looking
The
one.
George Foreman grill.
Spider-Man font.
So the thing is, one of the last versions of the backwards compatible ones that they made was like the 80 gig Metal Gear one.
Mm-hmm.
And because at the time, W decided he was going to give people a tax return bonus. Thanks, W. That's probably one of the only good things you did for me. I decided to buy the Metal Gear PS3 so I'd have a backwards compatible system. I was like, oh, it came with this game. So, like, if you were to go into my closet right now and look at the box for my PS3, it has, like, everything Metal Gear on it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the reason that I got it was backwards compatibility because I was like, PS2 games, yay! But yeah, the only reason I could afford it is because W gave tax return. So there you go. Which I assume that anybody who's listening to this would know who I'm referring to when I say W, right?
You'd hope so. I mean, I feel like our audience would know that.
Okay, yeah.
We don't really cater, I don't think, to little kids. So.
Well, I don't know, like, did everybody call him W, or was that just me and my friends? I feel like that's commonly known.
They made a film about him, and that's the title of the film.
Okay, then it's fine.
Also, that was like 10 years ago. It's not that long ago.
I know, but like, actually, like, what? It was 2008 when that came out? Or
what? MGS4?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out when it came out. Because
I think it was 08. It was 07 or 08.
I was working at GameStop when I got it.
And if you were getting a bundle, that would probably lean more 08.
Yeah. I think that it was 08 because W was trying to, like, help with the fact that, like, an incoming horrible economic crash was about to happen. Mm-hmm. Which probably helped it. But anyway, I just check because, like, I know that, you know, my brother's friend used to, like, go and get drunk and hang out on the back lawn and, like, call up the White House and ask to speak to W. So I wasn't sure if it was just, like, an us thing or if it was an actual thing. So I'm glad to know that it is an actual thing. But yes, that is the story of how I got my PS3.
So there you go. So with that in mind, you know, like we said, you know, you have some experience with Kojima games, and this being probably the earliest game you've seen of his.
Yeah.
All the way through.
Yeah.
How did the game kind of meet with your expectations? You know, maybe exceed, not exceed, all that sort of stuff. Like, what was your impressions of it?
Well, my first impression of it was, holy they just made Blade Runner.
Which I feel like that's a lot of people's first impression of it.
Right. And so that's interesting because, you know, he's, like, always touted as, like, this, like, amazing person in terms of storytelling and so creative and all that. And I'm just like, he just did, like, a Command C, Command V of Blade Runner.
I mean, that's the kind of, like, all of his games have, like, they're definite rooted influences from, like, other media in them.
And I mean, like, it's impossible to not have influences.
Totally, but, like, Kojima games in particular definitely have that. Like, I don't think anyone would really say, like, oh, he's this original creative genius, because, like, there's so much of this stuff that's just like, oh, well, this is from, you could tell he made it from this and all this sort of stuff. Like the original versions of Metal Gear have, like, people from Escape from New York as, like, the character models. Like, really? Like Sean Connery is Big Boss. Like, there is a fake Kurt Russell as Solid Snake in the original versions of Metal Gear. That obviously got, like, edited out when they came over here, but, like, the Japanese versions totally had that.
Well,
Kojima was on his bullshit from the beginning.
That seems likely. And so, like, that was my first impression of it, is like, okay, well, you know, he just did a copy paste.
Which I guess for people who don't know, that, like, once you get out of, like, the first, like, the opening bit of, like, exposition and get into, like, the opening credits sequence, like, that opening credit sequence is literally, like, the first couple of shots are basically the first couple of shots of Blade Runner.
Yeah, it's not even pretending. It's interesting that that's the case, and I guess it's kind of hard. Okay, no, that's a lie. I was gonna say it's kind of hard to mess up Blade Runner, but that is an absolute lie. Because the 90s recut exists. And I mean, even then, like the 80s recuts or the 80s release was not. Anyway,
I mean, coming from the book, you could definitely mess up Blade Runner.
I don't. Okay, yeah. I don't want to get into the weird shenanigans of Blade Runner and how there's like 7 different cuts of it, and that I have opinions on them, but I have opinions on most things. I don't know though, like I was irritated when we were playing through it and you kept telling me like, oh, this was edited because it was like this kind of situation, or like it was doing this, and I'm just like, he didn't even like, he was still just up to the bull, and like nothing about him has changed because having a 14-year-old girl in the shower is like very similar to his like, oh, you're gonna feel bad when you find out Quiet story,
or putting a vagina bomb into Paz.
Yeah, like he for one has zero respect for women, and it's clear. Like zero. Like his view of women is like, oh, they're pretty and they should be, that's it,
they should be fawning over me.
Yeah, basically. So that's kind of gross. And like every time the women showed up and they're just like, oh, I love you and whatever, and I was just like, oh my god, really? Like this dude's kind of like an idiot. But who am I to judge women for their taste in men? I don't know though. Like I can't say that I think this game is impressive. The one thing that I will say is that there is a gag at the very genuinely funny,
which they recreate in like the different versions.
Right. So that part is genuinely funny, but otherwise it was like, all right, like let's get through this, man. Let's do the thing. And like I also, and considering that it's like not all that graphic since it's the 90s, like I was a little put off by how violent it was. That was weird. Like you said, the whole dog thing, like you warned me before it happened and I was still like, ooh, God. It just felt sloppy in general, the whole thing.
I will agree with your points.
Okay.
I will say that like I came into Snatcher a few years ago, and I played it before I saw Blade Runner or even read the book, so didn't really have that. I mean, I knew it was very much heavily inspired by it, but I didn't really have like the point of references for like all like this is this is this, all that sort of stuff. I think for a game that comes out technically in the late 80s, early 90s, like it's a cool aesthetic. It works in that aspect. It's an interesting game for the Sega CD because a lot of the games for that system weren't really like this,
right,
at the time. And like like we said, it has a lot of voice acting in it. So like again, not a lot of games had that, or if they did, it was more relegated to F&V stuff.
Right.
The story is pretty generic.
Right.
And like even if you compare it to like other parts of Kojima's writing, like it's probably the lowest of his stories.
It's not a MG2 for you?
No. Which again, like Kojima is not really like the best writer at all, but like comparing this to the Metal Gear series as a whole, Police Knots, I would probably put this pretty near the bottom. The biggest I think thing I take away from this game is that like the soundtrack rules. Like yeah, I love this soundtrack.
I will agree with you on that.
Like it totally captures the the feeling, the aesthetic they are going for with this game, and a lot of that is based off of Blade Runner did it first 6 years prior, and then that was just aping film noir from the 40s.
Right.
So it's copying of a copy of a copy, essentially. But sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's like at some point the game itself is like the person next to you in high school copied your homework, and then like the person next to them copied their homework, and then next to them copied theirs, and by the time you get to like the fifth person that did it, you're like, okay, details have been lost here.
But like even with all that being said, like I think a lot of like just the way the music they choose for specific scenes and everything works so well.
It's really good.
And it's a game that really benefited from being on CD at the time. Like,
yeah.
Just having that high fidelity of sound and everything, and being able to have CD quality audio for all the music, it works so well. And like I've gone back and like listened to the original versions of the soundtrack and original versions of the songs for like the PC-88 and the MSX2 versions, and like they do not hold up as well compared to like the Sega CD version or the PC Engine CD version or the subsequent versions that had CD based technology, basically. So
right. And I mean, you're right, that soundtrack is amazing. Like it had some genuinely good songs in it that I would listen to just regularly.
It's no surprise considering it's like that arm of Konami at the time was just putting out banger soundtracks with all their games. So like this is just like another one of those that they just like put out, and it's just like, God, this rules.
But also like that kind of sound is like my aesthetic.
Yeah, totally. Like this is the kind of music that would fit well with like what do they call it? Basically kind of like that faux electronica 80s style genre that's kind of more popular today.
Oh, like the Carpenter Brute style stuff?
Yeah, kind of stuff like that. Like not necessarily in the same vein, but like there's a lot of like different groups that kind of do that same style.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think it would kind of fit into that if you modernized it a bit. Like you could probably easily like slide that in as well.
I could
like,
see
here's this retro 80s sounding stuff.
I mean, again, totally up my alley.
Yeah. Like I knew going into this, like I know like you don't like Kojima and anything, and I knew this was going to be a struggle to get through for you. But if there was one thing I thought you would come away from this like enjoying, would have been the soundtrack.
Do you have it?
Let's just say I am getting it soon on vinyl. And it's the Sega CD version.
Where did you get that?
It's on Fangamer.
What?
It's like four discs.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that.
Dude. Okay, does it go against everything that I am about if I have that soundtrack, but also just hate the game?
I mean, he didn't make the soundtrack.
He did not.
So
I just don't want somebody to like see that I own it, and they're like, oh, you must really like that. I'm like, no, I actually really don't at all.
I mean, that's all you have to say.
But the soundtrack's freaking full of bops.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, oh yeah, this is fantastic.
Like the artwork on it and everything's like all original and stuff. Like it looks real good. But yeah.
All right, well, add to cart.
Finally, another true believer of the Snatcher soundtrack. Let's talk about the plot.
Let's talk about the plot.
The intro basically is a big info dump with an amazing song that it permeates you in the background. The game starts off by telling you this is dedicated to all the cyberpunks who fight against injustice every day of their lives. And that note is in basically every version of the game, so you don't have to worry about that. June 6, 1996, a biological weapon goes off in Russia. It is called Lucifer Alpha, and basically it kills like a third of the world's population. This event becomes known as the catastrophe.
Creative.
I know. Oh God. And then the opening is like, would this be the worst thing humans have ever seen 50 years later?
God.
Humanoid robots have invaded Neo Kobe City. They look like us. They have artificial skin, but they're robots underneath. They become known as Snatchers. And then the Snatcher's like, brah. She slays for you. Obviously, early on, if you're playing the Sega CD version, this is one of the first things that's really edited, because in the Japanese versions of this game, like the Snatcher just looks straight up like a Terminator.
Yeah.
Straight up. But yeah, that's basically your big like world building introduction of what's going on. You get the opening credits. That's basically Blade Runner and everything. You can see some dudes knife fighting in the streets.
Yep.
So yeah, you're in Neo Kobe City. It is an enclosed island in Japan. Basically, it's kind of like shut itself out from the outside world and everything. Snatchers are invading this area, and they have made this new sort of police force called Junkers, and they are basically out there trying to eliminate Snatchers and find out where they're coming from and try and stop the Snatcher menace.
They're Blade Runners.
They're Junkers.
Blade Runners.
Junkers. You play as Gillian Seed. He is a newly Junker man. He just got the job as a Junker. He is an amnesiac.
Yep.
He doesn't remember his past or anything, or what's happened in like the last however many years. He has a wife. He has his wife, Jamie. She also does not remember anything, and they're both just like, And then the game opens up, and he's telling her, "Hey, I've become a Junker." She's like, "Oh, Gillian, why would you do that?" And then a car comes and picks him up, and then he mouths something at her. He's like, "What? I can't hear you. What?" And then he flies off in his car, and they go to the Konami building.
Yep, they sure do. I feel like at some point in this game, it should have just been like, you hear like the first part of like him saying Blade Runner is like, and then it like dubs it in terribly, like Junker. Would have been really funny.
It's like we're out here running blades or something.
Yeah. God, I just
my pizza.
My pizza. Oh no, I snorted. Please edit that out.
Never.
Oh
no. So this game is split off into third acts, like we've talked about it earlier. You know, the first versions of the game had only 2 acts, and then the PC Engine and CD version adds in the third act, which is the finale of the game and everything. The first act basically is you kind of like learning everything about the Junker headquarters, learning about the Snatcher menace and everything, and going out in the field for your first little introductions of what's happened and everything. You go to Junker headquarters, you meet Mika, who's like the secretary.
With her boobs
like,
out.
Yeah, she's like, oh, and he goes like, "Hey, what's going on? You want to get to know me?"
What a creeper.
You meet the chief, who basically tells you everything that you need to know about your job and everything, gives you some money in your Junker card. You meet Harry, who is the engineer. He presents you with your associate, a navigator by the name of Metal Gear.
Metal Gear.
Which is a really good little thing that they do, because like the Metal Gear in this is based off of the Metal Gear from Metal Gear 2. And when it comes into when it first gets introduced, like you see like the shadow, and it's like way bigger in the background, and like it's playing the literal theme of Metal Gear from the Metal Gear games. Like it's a really good little touch there. It's also like a goof that they would also do in Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah.
Like there's a figurine in the early parts of that game of one of the bosses from 1 that you come up on, there's like a light is shining on it, and you see just a huge shadow. You're like, I'm pretty sure I killed that guy in Metal Gear Solid 1, and then you come up, it's just like a little toy.
Nice.
So
I guess the positive about this is that like we didn't get some kind of racial slur with the chief this time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Gillian didn't have to say some. Oh boy, some words.
Some words.
Yeah.
I had forgotten all about that. And then hearing Harrison Ford say it, I was like, whoa! Whoa!
Big woes.
Like, oof.
Yeah. While you're meeting Metal Gear for the first time, you get a distress call from the other Junker agent that's out there. There's only one more. That is Jean-Jacques Gibson. He has found a Snatcher, and he's out in like an abandoned building. So you and Metal Gear go out and find him. You find that his head's been ripped clean off his head, and it's just by his body. You find his navigator, who is Lil Jon. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? It's just going, okay. You take off the the memory core of Lil Jon, and there's like still some stuff on there that you're gonna try and be able to do. You find his body and everything, and you realize that these Snatchers are still there in the building, but then you have to make it a quick escape because it's gonna explode, and also you have to do like a shooting sequence, which is not fun. The shooting sequences in this game are bad. They're real bad.
I hated even watching you have to do them. It seemed really, really, really hard and dumb.
We got through all of them though, first try, which was.
I was impressed, my dude.
It was very intense. So basically, the shooting sequences are, the game splits the screen into 9 sections, and you have to you get an aiming reticle, and you have to move them to the specific sets of the screen where an enemy will show up, and you basically just blast them. You have unlimited ammo, which is really nice. So you're not have to like reload or anything like a light gun game, but you have limited health. So if you basically get off of a shot once and you miss and you just get off rhythm, you're pretty much dead. It will mess you up. Once you get out of the factory and everything, you start trying to find the identity of the Snatchers that murdered Jean-Jacques Gibson. You go to his house and look through there. You find some stuff. You meet an informant named Napoleon. And then eventually, you go to like some various places throughout there. You go to a bar named Outer Heaven, which is another Metal Gear reference. That's where like all like the weird Hollywood characters would be if you were playing the Japanese version, but in the North American and European versions, it's like Konami characters. So like it's like here's the dudes from Contra and Rocket Knight from Rocket Knight Adventures.
And a stripper.
And then, there's just a lady who's like, I have some information. Here you go. Doing a little dance.
In the back. As you do. Which I guess it should be mentioned, like, Napoleon's kind of like a Chinese racial stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's worth mentioning.
Yes. That is
because
true.
He absolutely is.
Just like the way his character design is, the way he's voiced and everything, like it's very much racial stereotype. And even just like the idea of like, here's this shady Chinese man being an information broker.
Mm-hmm.
Also fits into that.
Yeah, it's problematic to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Eventually you track down 2 suspects who you think they are, and then like one of them is just like some druggie who you put your gun to his head. He's like, "Where's the Snatchers, boy?" He's like, "Oh, dude, I just wanted to do some drugs, man. I don't know what happened. I'm just
want to
air surf, man."
God. Which, like, what an extreme thing to do. Like, go in this dude's house and put a gun in his mouth and be like, "Where are they?" Like, Jesus Christ, my dude. Like, try some diplomacy.
You eventually find another suspect who turns out to be a Snatcher. Also, his wife was a Snatcher.
She's the one that her boobies can be out.
You blast her face.
Yeah.
With your gun.
Yeah. After you checking out her bathtub.
Which is just like very clean and weird. Full of water.
Full of water.
And then she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you, Junker." And then you have to shoot her.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
like, legit, what is the justification of having her boobs out in the original version? Like, what?
It's a great question. I wish I could tell you, but I don't know.
Like,
it's titillating. Whoa.
Well, I was thinking, like, the only thing I could think of is, like, if she's trying to distract the dude, she just, like, rips her top down so that she can, like, murder him.
But she's not. She's like, hey, Junker, I know what you're up to. I'm going to murder you now.
Right. Like, there's nothing that she would do that would have them fall out like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, like, let's go ahead and sexualize this woman who literally has no head anymore.
Yep. Who has a hole in her head.
It's disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Eventually, the husband shows back up and tries to kill you, but you are saved by a bounty hunter whose name is Random Hajil. He's a bounty hunter who goes after Snatchers. He's different than a Junker because I don't know. He's not official.
He definitely doesn't look anything like a character in Blade Runner.
Definitely not.
Nope, nope.
Super duper not.
Totally different.
He's got a motorcycle.
Original character, do not steal.
Pretty much. You basically find there's a hospital that Jean-Jacques was investigating before he died and everything. And you have to go try and find that. Also, you meet up with his daughter and everything.
Yeah.
She becomes infatuated with you for whatever reason.
I don't think that. Okay, let me clarify first. I don't think Kojima should go anywhere near 14-year-old girls.
Definitely not.
But also I don't think he's ever actually been around a 14-year-old girl, because it's not like a thing where they're just like, oh, look at this man who's like in his 30s. I'm instantly in love. It's like, what? No.
My dad just died.
Yeah, like my dad just literally had his head ripped from his body. I'm in mourning a bit. I'm very, very stressed because things are like going crazy. It's not gonna be like, oh man, I want this like 36-year-old man in my pants.
I'm gonna go to his house and take a shower for reasons.
Like it's very bizarre and makes no sense. And honestly, like her characterization is like abysmal.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say that for basically all the women characters in the movie, but
You're not wrong.
you know.
But yeah, they have to go find a hospital. The first one they go to is like, the name looks similar, but it's like a veterinarian's office. So it's not that, but then they eventually find the right one, which is
they realized that some of the neon lights had been burnt out in the name, and that's why it didn't show up.
So eventually they find the hospital is looks unused and everything, but like there are snatchers in there, and then there's like a secret underground laboratory where they are doing snatcher experiments and everything.
It's Dexter's.
Yes. But they're trying to like find a cure for the one main problem that snatchers have, is that like they can't go out during the day or anything. They relegate most of their activity toward winter, because that's when like there's a lot of darkness. Because if they go out in the sunlight, they basically will get cancer, because their artificial skin is not well equipped for UV rays.
They need sunscreen.
They need a lot of sunscreen.
I also need a lot of sunscreen.
There you go. I think the second time you go back to the hospital and everything, your turbo chopper copter, your car gets vandalized.
Your Blade Runner vehicle.
Yeah. And then, like, it just, like, the throttle gets stuck on it. You can't get out, so you have to jump to Random's motorcycle, who conveniently just shows up at the right time before you go careening off a cliff or something.
Yay.
It's real bad.
Yeah. You just like chuck Metal Gear over there, though. And somehow he's like on the motorcycle, which is sure, I guess.
Yep. You go down and like investigate the underground portion of this hospital where like all their experiments are taking place and everything. You find a bunch of like exoskeletons for snatchers and everything. You find the dude who was running the hospital. He's also now a snatcher. He's got some snatcher goons with him. You find out while you're in this hospital by looking through some records that the chief is a snatcher.
Ah!
Oh no.
Who would have thunk?
Who would have thunk? They get attacked, and there's a hole behind them, and Random's like, I'll do some stuff. I got some bombs. I'll blow them up, and I'll let you and Metal Gear escape into the tunnels. Yeah, go through the vents. So he does that. He blows up, takes them out. They end up in like some like unused subway tunnels, essentially. And there's where they find out like they're able to get back into like the one dude they had initially tried to kill, the one snatcher in his wife's house. There's like a hidden compartment that like a ladder that leads up through like their bathtub that allows you to get in there. So like that's a way for them to go into this hospital and do all that sort of stuff. So there's a bunch of like weird interconnected ways that they're able to move around without having to go outside and everything. So you learn about that. But since you know about the chief and everything, you have to go back to HQ and find the chief, who's like, now he knows he knows you know, so you have to eliminate him.
Which the whole thing of like reconstructing the face of the victims, like that was weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like that entire mechanic. Like, why would you sit there and it's like, let me
Oh,
go through all the
yeah.
instructions of reconstructing the space over and over and over again. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I got the point. Just please move on. And then eventually it's like, ooh, the chief's body is the most recent one.
You eventually take out the chief, who's like, you won't be able to stop us. Also tries to take Mika hostage. Because she was like, she for some reason decides to get out of her weird cage.
Yeah, and also like terrible things happen.
Mm-hmm. You also find Harry, who got attacked by the chief. He's been mortally wounded.
Mortally wounded!
And he's like, oh no, I'm sorry. Gillian, we were supposed to get a drink. I'm sorry, I was kind of a jerk. Ugh.
Dead.
I didn't know my parents.
Yeah, he has a picture of like him and like basically like the 90s cartoon version of his parents, so like they have a body but like you can't see their heads.
Well, like it's just like the photo is just him, but like you see a little bit of the body, but like the other parts are ripped off, so you don't get to see them.
Right. And he's like, I wish I knew my parents, but this proves that they existed. But I'm dead.
Then after that, you get a call from Jamie, who's like, I've been taken to the Kremlin. I've been taken hostage. Also, there's a lot of, they realize like there's a bunch of like Russian imagery found in Snatcher hideouts. Like the chief had this photo of the Kremlin. The Snatcher husband and wife had a map of Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, there's a lot of Russian connections with the Snatchers, which obviously is a game made in the late 80s.
Makes sense.
Russia's got to be the enemy.
Yeah.
But this is where like the end of Act 2 would be.
Mm-hmm.
So if you play the original game, this would be the cliffhanger ending.
Yay.
But of course we have the other version, so we get to move on past this. The beginning of Act 3 is basically just a large like previously on.
Yeah.
Let's recap everything that happened and make sure you know what's happening. Pretty much off the cuff, you realize that Harry was Gillian and Jamie's son.
Mm-hmm.
They were put in cryogenic sleep for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they were found, that's why they have amnesia, because they came out too early and everything. So all that happened. The rescue team who got them are now all Snatchers, but somehow they weren't. And they also realize, hey, we need to find some place that looks similar to all of the weird Russian imagery we've been finding. So they find this church that like is on a river that looks the same as a river in Russia and everything.
But also like the video, they're like, oh, there's snow around here, and then like, but it's not snowing, and then they realize like this
Snow 9.
Snow 9, yeah. Which makes me think of Ice 9.
I know. Snow 9's a thing where like if you're around it, Snatchers are nearby.
Sneeze.
And you make people get allergic to it. So Gillian and Metal Gear go to this church that looks like the Kremlin now. They run around, they enter it, and like there's a big photo of a dude who looks familiar.
He does look familiar.
At the very beginning, you go through the church and everything. You find a bunch of Snatcher exoskeletons, some kind of half-finished Snatchers who look like various world leaders, because they're going to go try and like snatch all the world leaders at this summit that's happening in Kyoto.
Mm-hmm.
One of them looks like you. They're
Me?
gonna snatch you. And basically, this is one where you have to go through like one of the, like the hard combat sequences. And it's like 3 in a row you have to go through, which is not fun. So basically, while you're there, the world leaders are trying to figure out what they're going to do about Neo Kobe City. It's basically up to, hey, we're going to nuke this place to get rid of the Snatchers, or we're going to, if you're able to find where they're being, like their headquarters are, we'll send down a giant laser from a satellite and blow up.
Yay.
So that's the big options that are on the table. Eventually you find Jamie. She's like, hello, I'm here. And then you find Dr. Modnar, who is dead, just laying out there.
Just super dead.
Yep. And then you find who took Jamie hostage, and that was Elijah Modnar, the son of Dr. Modnar, who was the doctor who created the Snatchers and everything. And then you learn also, hey, the 3 of you, Elijah, Gillian and Jamie worked together in Russia in the mid 90s and basically helped create the Snatcher project and everything. That's their hidden past.
Da-ba-bum.
Da 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 da. Gillian was a CIA agent. He was a spy. Jamie was just there, and then Elijah was just there as well. Elijah really had the hots for Jamie, and then Gillian came along and was like, hey. And Jamie was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
An American.
I was like, why'd she just turn into Mario? Oh, man. But yeah, apparently in this game, just like any lady who looks at Gillian is apparently like, oh, you're beautiful. I was like, what? No. What? This isn't how this works.
So once that happens, Elijah turns into a boy and is like, well, if I can't have her, no one can.
He's the one with the like weird cable leggies, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So he's the person who started the catastrophe. He led Lucifer Alpha out. And then like they were going to all three go into cryogenic sleep to wait out the effects of Lucifer Alpha. He set his thing like early to get out early and then work on the Snatcher project again while he was eventually going to revive Jamie, but then let Gillian just sleep forever. But then eventually they got found and everything. And basically he's just mad about what happened 50 years ago, that he wasn't able to woo Jamie, so now he's going to try and take over the world of Snatchers.
But I'm such a nice guy.
That's basically it.
That's
basically it. He's like, oh, you have the great or we have the artificial skin now that will work and everything. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And then he reveals he has Random's body. Random was a Snatcher.
Da-da-dum.
But he was a Snatcher. He was an anti-Snatcher created to defeat Snatchers. He was made by Dr. Modnar, Elijah's father, and everything, and basically was made to look like Elijah and everything, and had like Elijah's memories implanted into him to make him so he didn't think he was a robot or anything. Similar to some other plot points elsewhere. Also, Random Hagio is Elijah Modnar backwards.
Yep.
What a dumb thing. Oh, yeah. So Elijah's like, now I'm going to kill you both. But then Random turns on. He's like, no, you're not going to do anything. I'm going to put you in a chokehold. You can't do anything. And then Metal Gear shows up. He's like, Gillian, they're going to shoot the laser from the satellite. They've got the target on the church. You've got to get out of here. And Gillian's like, no, Metal, you got to stay with me. And Metal Gear's like, no, I got to do my job. I will stay here and guide the laser. So Gillian and Jamie get out. Metal stays there, and Random's like, you did good, Metal. You're a good helper. I'm going to keep choking this dude who looks just like me.
just a little older. Yeah.
Yep, yeah.
Weird tentacle leggies.
Yep. The weapon fires, it blows up the church and everything, kills everyone involved inside. And then they learn about a Snatcher factory in Moscow, which this is the end of the game. Gillian's going to go off and take care of that and try and wipe that out, and that'll be the end of the Snatcher menace and everything.
Yay!
He gets his memories back, or he doesn't have his memories fully back, but he's going to try and get back with Jamie, and they're going to try and do their thing again. And then Metal Gear shows up as a Sega CD. He's like, take me with you, Gillian.
That made me happy. Like, genuinely, that part made me happy. That was clever.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Which basically, if you were playing other versions, like he'll show up as a PC Engine CD, he'll show up as a PlayStation, he'll show up as a Sega Saturn in that ending sequence. Just real good and dumb. But yeah, that's Snatcher in a nutshell.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Neo Kobe City.
Which I guess that's something that we should mention, is that like it does take place. We've mentioned it before, but like it does take place at Christmas time. There's like Christmassy stuff.
There's a Christmas song in the game.
There's like a Santa at one point, I think.
Yeah, Napoleon dresses up as a Santa.
Right. So like it's very it's Christmas in the same sense that like Home Alone is Christmas.
Yeah. What better way to ring in the holidays than by playing Snatcher?
I could think of a few better ways. But you know, we did it. I got through it.
Yeah.
I didn't completely rage. Only little rages.
Only a little. And we probably played the best version because you don't have to. There's not a ton of gross in this game, in this version, than there is compared to the other versions.
Yay! I don't like gross.
Which will make other people mad because they're like, oh, censorship.
You know what? No one needs to have in their games where you can like sniff panties and see a 14-year-old naked. Just saying.
Go tell that to some people. They will yell and complain.
I mean, they're wrong.
It's the artistic value. It's the developer's choice. It's like, shut the up.
Fart noises.
Yep.
Like, my dudes, no, that's not cool. Get out. Blech.
So that's Snatcher.
We did it.
We did it. And now we'll probably never talk about a Hideo Kojima game on this podcast ever again.
I doubt it unless you can somehow convince something to happen, and I don't know. I can't think of another instance where it would actually happen.
Yeah, like I don't see like you really being like, hey, you want to watch me play Metal Gear Solid 2? Like you're like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, yeah, I understand. And like none of the other games really have like a little goofy little thing that we can kind of tie it to. So
right,
it is what it is. Next week we're going to talk about Death Stranding.
I would rather individually pull off every single one of my toenails.
That sounds terrible.
I would rather do that than play Death Stranding.
Good Lord.
Although I did have a coworker come to my office the other day and was asking me if I knew anything about it, and was asking how much I thought that Monster Energy drinks funded the game. And I was like, I don't know. Like, is there something big with Monster? He's like, oh yeah, you don't know that? That's like one of the mechanics that you have to like constantly be drinking Monster Energy drinks. And I'm just like, oh my god.
Yeah, you can turn rainwater into Monster Energy drink in that game.
I hate everything.
Those Monster Energy drink cans are a very high quality, high resolution. Yeah, Monster Energy probably paid. They cut a pretty big check to noted indie developer Hideo Kojima.
Right, like he started from zero.
He started from nothing.
Got to here.
Started from the bottom. Now we're here.
I fucking hate him with all of my being. Like I cannot think. Okay, no. I was going to say I cannot think of someone that I dislike more in the industry, but he might have some competition with Nomura.
Man.
Do I want to know what you're about to ask me? Do I want to know?
Rank your least favorite people in video games.
Oh, jeez.
Hideo Kojima, Tetsuya Nomura, or Hoshino.
Oh, God. Can't we just put them all on like an island and like let them do their thing there?
We could.
I mean, I think it's a good idea.
There you go.
I don't know. I don't know that I can rank them because they're all just such garbage. And they all continue their bullshit. Like, even though they know it's bullshit, they're like, oh, but I like this bullshit. I'm going to continue doing it. It's like, why? Why are you doing these terrible things that you know are wrong? I will say those three are like the worst in game development in Japan.
Yeah.
Like, hands down, those three are the worst.
Anyways, we played Snatcher.
You got me to watch you play through a Kojima game.
We did. There you go.
You know, the things that I do for this podcast.
I'll never ask you to do something that terrible again.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I
Maybe.
did get the soundtrack,
That's
though.
debatable. You never know what will happen in the future.
You never know.
But that's Snatcher. That's going to do it for this episode.
Happy holidays.
You're now a cyberpunk. You fight against injustice every day of your life.
I mean, I do, but... Man, you know what? Also, just the fact that he says that and, like, is such a tool that... Okay. You know what's an injustice? Sexualizing 14-year-old girls.
Mm-hmm.
You know what else is an injustice? Sexualizing dead women.
Mm-hmm.
You know what else is an injustice? Only having women as sexual objects.
Mm-hmm.
How about
Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk.
Look for these themes and more in Cyberpunk 2077. Anyways.
Yep.
That's going to do it for this episode.
Yep.
So if you would like more from us, go to seasonalcheckup.com or SCC.cool where you can find past episodes of this podcast and other podcasts like Seasonal Checkup and Jared Now Watch. You can find columns and reviews on the site as well. If you would like more from Ann Ladium, go to AnnLadium.com. She's got columns and reviews.
Yep.
You can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/animecheckup.
Yep.
And if you would like to support us financially and buy us a slice of pizza, you can at patreon.com/SACOVA.
Yay.
Get all these hot podcasts unedited, early,
Woo.
and then some other bonus ones as well.
Woo.
Next week, time to end the year.
Man.
The big wrap-up.
Man.
And by that I mean it's time once again for the annual Seasonal Anime Checkup OVA Game of the Year Awards.
Mm-hmm.
We've got lists.
We do.
We've got awards.
We do.
We've got games to celebrate.
It's true.
And we will be doing all of that next week. And now, you know, excuse me. I am going to give you a hot exclusive here.
Okay.
The 2019 Game of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you it right now. It's...
Wow. Wow.
There you go. I mean, it's a very hot exclusive you're hearing here first, but you'll find out how we came to that conclusion next week.
Should be amazing.